Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Asel Ormonova. Asel is a life coach, former humanitarian worker who worked for the United Nations for 10 years in various conflicts, emergencies with refugees, and internally displaced and stateless persons. Asel loves helping people design their ideal lives by helping them to be in charge and removing unnecessary suffering and complaining. Her journey has always been about achieving the impossible, starting from being able to study despite her parents wanting to arrange a marriage for her, to studying in Germany, to working with refugees, which was her dream job. All of this was possible thanks to her continuous work on her growth mindset. Zell loves to help others who wish to uncover what else they are capable of creating in their life. So please welcome to the show, Asel Ormonova. Asel, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Bob.
Well, great. Well, why don't we? You've got an interesting background. I mean, let's tell the people a little bit about how you got to where you are today, because that's an interesting journey. Not a lot of people are, have worked with the United Nations. So tell us about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I actually was adopted in a small village in Kyrgyzstan, and being raised in a family of very conservative yet poor background meant that I didn't really have any opportunities to do anything, basically. So they thought the best thing I can do is get married and produce children because that's how everyone did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't want to settle for that because I thought there was something more to life than just do that. So,
Yeah.
so with a lot of fighting within the family as to whether to study or not, and they couldn't afford to get me study. So after a lot of battles, I finally managed to study and did all my studies, even went to Germany to study. And then after that, I got a job at the United Nations because that was what I really wanted, to help refugees to settle in and actually start new life. I guess I always wanted to help people to find their dream jobs, dream lives, and that's how I got to work with United Nations for 10 years.
Wow.
And that was an amazing journey that got me to leadership positions, managerial positions. And at some point, I thought that that's not really what I want to do for the next 10 years of being a diplomat and representing. So I thought I really want to get down to helping individuals. So that's why I decided to work as a life coach and help change people's lives.
So you brought it down to the individual human level. Very, very interesting.
Right.
And it's interesting because your podcast, the No Complaining Rule, talks about these ideas, and I appreciate that because I often say complaining is like a rocking chair. You do a whole lot of work and it doesn't get you anywhere.
Yes, that's so true. I love the description.
Well, and another thing you talk about is freedom. Does not complaining, or if you will, the lack of complaining, does that help with that freedom? Could you explain that a little bit?
So, what I find with complaining is that it's a lot of noise that is unnecessary that we create in our heads, and then we just stuff our heads with, as I call it, a junk food.
Yeah.
And once we have that junk food, we either have to sit a long time to process it, or we just decide not to do that anymore because we know there is no benefit in the end of the day. But I think because our brains are so get used to that complaining mode that we just so happen to be doing it without, as if we can control it anymore, right? It's a bit like with junk food as well, that once you get into the habit, you think like, oh no, I can't, they rule my life basically. So what I'm suggesting is that let us remove all of that junk food from our heads, from our minds, so that we can create space for other things that we can think about. And I feel like as long as we are addicted to those type of thoughts, we cannot really be free to be thinking and creating what we want, because we're, again, so busy with things that we can't really be in charge of. So that's why once we free them, then our brain's like, oh, we can breathe and we can think of other things that actually is more important in life.
Right. It's interesting because our society today, there's so many external stimuli that tell you like you said, the noise. They tell you you're not good enough. You don't look like you're not tall enough. You need this will
Right.
make you feel better. And
Mhm.
that's like you said, that's all noise in your head that we don't need. Did
Exactly.
your experience with the United Nations help to see the true value of? I mean, these people are displaced. They may be fighting for their life.
Yeah.
Did that give you an insight of how how important those key factors were in life of survival, water, those type of things, so that you could you know maybe it guided you towards this no complaining concept.
Yeah, that's so true, right? So when I started working with people like refugees who've basically lost everything in their lives and overnight even, right? So things that happen to them through conflict or displacement that they never thought of before, and all of a sudden in life you know what your priorities are.
Right.
You don't sit around and think about or like I don't know, stuff yourself with unnecessary things, or say, but you know what's important
Right.
and you go and get it, because you don't really have a luxury of time or luxury of other material things,
Mhm.
but you have you and yourself basically. So you need to know what you have to do to get your family fed or surviving the next day basically,
Right.
right? So when you interact with people like that, I guess to a certain point you realize that as human beings we are not only resilient as such and we know what to do in such situations, but we are also so capable of knowing what's important in life
Right.
and also have that always in mind. And I think for me, what is so amazing is that we have like I'm not saying that we all need to be refugees to know it,
Right.
but we as human beings know all of this. We have all that capacity, the ability to know what's important and what our focus can be in life. It's just that we get so distracted by so many things in life that we lose that track at some point. So that's why I love what you said about how we can learn from those people as examples of not only knowing what you value in life, but also going towards that with determination, commitment, and get it, and especially positive attitude to getting it. Because when you have nothing to rely on,
Right.
you just start getting your own trust in yourself, your belief in yourself that you can do this because you are an amazing, unique human being, and then you go and get it. So I think we could all, yeah, develop those type of skills more rather than being so distracted by external stimulus.
And it's interesting because you've been around the world a little bit, and I think that gives you a perspective of not only what you experienced with the refugees and so forth, but
Yeah.
going from place to place. I mean, you went to Germany from a different country. You've been different countries. That's like you said, you can't rely on any previous experience because it's not there. So you're
Yeah.
learning as you're going, and you're going after that. There's no external stimuli. And I think others that have not had that experience or have not experienced that in multiple generations, we get complacent. And that idea of
Yeah.
working hard and focusing on what you want, knowing that you're capable of doing it. Like you said, it's a primal instinct to take care of
Yeah.
yourself. Food, water,
Yeah.
shelter. Those are primal things that we have
Yeah.
within us. And I think that the comfort levels that we sometimes get, that complacency takes over. And like you said, then it gets into the complaining, it gets into maybe I don't want to do that today, or
Yeah.
different things like that. So very interesting. That's so insightful.
Exactly. So I think one thing I want to point out here is that this experience of also living in different places, as you say, I think shows that we as humans also don't necessarily need to rely on the past to see what we're capable of, right? Because
Very
we
good
often
point.
think that our past defines who we are or what we are capable of. Of course, if we want to use it in a good way to serve us, then that's great. But I fear that a lot of the times we use it against ourselves by saying, oh, I've never been able to do this before, so therefore I cannot do this.
Right.
And therefore I give up before even starting, right? So that's why I really want to encourage every one of us to say, just because we happen to do or not do something in the past does not mean that we cannot do it.
Right.
And we can always start from scratch if we wanted, which is an amazing ability to have. Because if we decided that I want to be this person tomorrow, we can absolutely do that. It's just that we never think, I think, that this is a possibility, and we don't even allow ourselves to learn that this is what we can do. So let's leave the past if you don't want to rely on it, and just start from today if you decided to.
Right. I think people need to realize, the past is a snapshot of your life. Yes,
Oh, beautifully said.
it's a camera shot. A camera shot
Yeah,
is 1 second. Okay. Yeah, that
so
was
true.
then. This is now. We've seen how we look when we're, 8,
Yeah.
12, 15, and then 20, 35, we change. And so that's, good to remember and realize we will all change. So great reminder
Yes.
for that. Do you think with the idea of complaining, I sometimes feel like it's a weight, but is it
Mm.
something we can learn from? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So the way I define complaining is it's an action that we do based on a feeling that we have, which is usually a negative feeling.
Okay.
I don't think people complain when they're too happy. I
No,
don't think
no.
they say, "Oh, I'm too happy. I can't be happy anymore."
Yeah.
So it's usually we complain when some kind of feeling behind us that's fueling us. And that feeling is, of course, generated by a thought that we have about the world, about ourselves, or whatever else we can come up with. Now, that action is, as such, is not a bad action if the fueling is not there. So, in other words,
Right.
if we were complaining out of greatness and satisfaction and saying, "Oh, I'm too satisfied and, I can't be more satisfied," then we would say, "Okay, you can keep doing it." But because we are doing it because of the feeling of dissatisfaction, disappointment, unhappiness for whatever reason, pissed with something, right? So, whatever that fueling energy is, and that's the problem that I find. And again, not because we cannot experience those feelings, but because those feelings often lead us to a cycle that we cannot then get out, right? So
Right.
as we said, that it's such a, like, as if our brains so like this type of activities that it gets into the habit of doing it.
Right.
And the beauty about our brains is that it's in a way also a habit machine, right? So whatever we feed into it, it's going to keep producing it. So all I'm saying is that why keep producing something negative that we can't get any result out of it when we can feed it with something wonderful?
Right.
And then something useful. So we can also fuel all of our activities or actions with something that actually serves us, that we know why we're feeling it. So we know that why we are disappointed, or we know why we are unhappy, and we really need to know the reason behind it rather than just keep doing it and keep complaining that things don't change, the
Right.
government's not going to do things that I want, or my spouse is not the person I used to be loving, or
Yeah.
whatever the complaining is, right? So because that spiral will always in the end with something negative that we don't like.
Right. Right.
So I'm suggesting that whenever you're complaining, look at the fueling energy behind it, whatever the feeling is, and ask yourself, why are you feeling it? And once you know the answer to that question, then it's likely that you stop complaining, if
Right.
that's what you want, of course.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, sometimes that habit makes you feel good, so you continue to do it even though it's not good for you.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
I realized that complaining is also in several forms. So one is obviously the complaining about ourselves and about people around us, but also there are sometimes complaints that we think are good for socializing purposes,
Right.
right? So you go
Yeah.
to a bar and you
Yeah.
talk to the next person and you say something like, "Oh, this government shouldn't be doing this," and then everyone starts joining in, and then this type of a socializing activity. And if that's what you really want, fine. I guess there's no harm in it. But as long as it becomes something like of a toxic, quote unquote, in your head,
Right.
where it's really stopping you from getting things that you want to get or solving things that you want to solve, then it becomes a problem if you don't actually look at the feeling behind it. Otherwise, if you do it for socialization purposes, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It's always interesting too, as you were talking about that the idea that, they complain that people will continue to do it, but I make it akin to an idea and an actual scenario I had with a friend of mine. Was we were walking down a road after a rain one time, and we stopped to do something. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden a car came by and it splashed. He was like, "Oh," and he stood there
Yeah.
like that. And then another car came by and did the same thing. And it's like, okay, if it's going to happen again, you got to do something. You got to take that action. You got to get out of the way and move. And finally, it was after that second one, it was like, get out of the way. I got to get out of here. That's what we have to, like you said, find out, okay, what's that thing that causes you to complain? But then take the action to move away from it, to do something different, to take that action and alter your thought or alter your actions so you're not doing that.
Yes. And maybe one thing just to point out here is that the danger of keep complaining and not doing any actions to solve it, so to say, is likely to lead us to think that we are not in charge in our lives anymore.
Right.
And that's, I think, the biggest problem that I find with complaining is that whenever we complain, we're as if telling the world that, I just gave up in my life, right? I'm not in charge anymore. Things happen to me, poor me.
Right.
I'm this person, the victim of this life, and there's nothing I can do. And this is not the signal that we want to be sending to our brains, because our brains take that signal and like, okay, we're going to believe this, and this is how our life is going to be. And then we will just get into the cycle again.
Right. And that's a great reminder to people that we have the ability to change. We have that ability to change that direction. As humans, it's a great ability, and we need to take advantage of that, because we could be going down a road that's not great, but you can change in a minute and it will go a different direction and end up in a much greater area of your life. It's interesting because there's I saw some mention it, some ways people can limit their complaining, if you will. What are some of those ways people can do that?
So I guess limiting was a last resort option, I would say. If you, let's say that you are someone who's like, okay, I can't do anything about my complaining, it's a bit like of a hobby for me and I can't live without it, then you can decide for yourself how far it's influencing your life, in which way, right? So if you think that it's not really bad, like we always say, oh, in the end of the day, no one died, and we explain things, right? And then if we are someone who's like that, okay, in the end of the day, no one died out of my complaining and I'm just going to keep doing it, then I just suggest that you decide for yourself which areas of your life maybe where you want to keep that complaining and which areas you want to clear it out.
Right.
Because if we don't do that, there is a risk that no one is going to talk to us soon, because everyone's like, this complaining person, like every time I see, I can't stand it, right? So Bob, you probably met people like that and you're like, no, I want to get away from that person because it's like a smoke coming out of that person.
Yeah, it's toxic.
And exactly, we say toxic, exactly. So in order for us not to become that toxic as a complainer, then we may want to actually say, okay, I want to be complaining about everything about my life, for instance, but I'm not going to extend it to other people's lives. Because sometimes complainers have this also habit to extend it to others and start getting involved with other people's lives, or saying you shouldn't be doing this or that. And then that becomes a very heavy burden on the relationship that the person has.
Gotcha.
So then in the end, no one wants to come and have tea with you because, they don't want to be influenced by your toxic energy, I guess. So the way that you can limit it is, okay, I allow complaining to influence my life and I'm fine with it, but I'm not going to allow to influence other people's life, or I'm not going to try to manipulate other people in a way that it affects relationships negatively, basically.
Okay. interesting. It's as you were saying that, it was interesting. I could see somebody putting on their calendar, this is my complaint time. Specify certain times of the day to limit your complaining. Like you said, if you're going to do it to yourself, you're doing it at home before you go out and meet anybody and all that. And you have certain slots where it's letting off some of that steam. And I think the interesting part about that is it does allow you to see what could be happening. What's causing this? Okay, why am I always, I'm complaining about financial situation, but what's going on? Oh, I'm going out with my friends so much, I'm spending a lot of money. I don't have enough left over because of my bill. And then you find ways to fix that. You got to take the action to, okay, what bills can I adjust? Can I go out and get a second job? Can I, save more money? How do I spend less? You start looking at other options, and those options are more positive, and they help you to
Yeah.
grow and learn. So it could be a learning process too.
Absolutely. So I think complaint actually has a job to tell us that something is wrong, right?
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
not even complaint as such, but the feeling behind it always tells us the message that something is wrong in our system, that we need to fix it. And oftentimes we are not really ready to look at those problems, but rather we want to keep on growing those problems, right? So therefore what you're saying makes perfect sense. Rather than keep indulging in it, we are like, okay, wait a minute, stop and have a look at it and see what I can do with it.
Right.
And why am I feeling this way, or why am I complaining, and what I can do specifically to change it. And if we think that we are out of control and we can't do anything about it, then like any other addiction, I would say, you just start being aware of how many hours you might be spending on complaining. I mean, you can even start by saying, how do you define complaining for yourself? How many hours you might be spending on it,
Right.
and not only expressing it, but also in your head, the stuff that you're talking to yourself without saying outside.
Yeah.
Because those could be also very toxic for your own well-being, and look at those. And I used to actually do journaling at some point, which I learned from Tony Robinson. And when I did the journaling, I realized that I cannot go without an hour not complaining.
Oh.
And that's when it hit me that if I'm complaining several minutes per hour, then I'm definitely spending most of my time complaining.
Yeah.
And that's not how I want to live my life. So everyone can decide for themselves how they want to look at it. But I think we actually spend more time on it than we are aware of it.
And that's a great point too, that journaling, and it does allow you to see those things, but
Yeah.
you've got to take the time to do it. You've got to write down everything. As harsh as it is your journal to you, so you learn and you grow. And interesting, you saw that in your life about, okay, how many minutes a day, you add that up. It's like investing. Okay, if I don't spend that $4 for a cup of coffee every day,
Yeah.
that's $20 a week. Okay, 50, that's $1,000 a year I could be putting
Yes.
towards something that grows better. Complaining is the same thing. You see so many
Yeah.
minutes, hours that you're complaining a day or a month. Wow, that's a
Yeah.
lot of time. People say, well, I never have time. Well, wait a second. You may have found 10 hours, in a week or in a month. There's 10 extra hours a month. Well, let's
Exactly.
shift that
Exactly.
around. Let's learn a new skill. Let's share with others, a growth opportunity. As a
Yes.
life coach, is that something you share with people? Is that shift an alternative to doing something else and the benefit of it?
So what I really work with people, I feel, is in the end of the day, is help them develop skills.
Mhm.
That's really my job. It's not even because I'm not really proponent of solving problems as they come over, because we're really extinguishing fires, which, in the long run, let's face it, we all get exhausted and we don't like our lives, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, yeah, so therefore my job is to really help people first get the skill of being aware of how much they are capable of,
Right.
and how much they can use their brain for, basically.
We forget that
And
great tool
yeah,
that's right here,
exactly. And I think the other skill that I really want to help people build is relying on their inner wisdom rather than on external other people's wisdoms.
Right.
because we again get so much into the habit of looking for answers everywhere but not within us. And I find that pity again, because we have such a powerful tool within us, and our minds and our bodies, who are there to serve us and provide any answer that we want. But somehow we are not in the habit of asking those, and
Yeah.
just go Google it and then ask the next best expert, and then argue with that expert or
Right.
whatnot, and then complain that no one's giving the answer that we want. And then in the end, we just get into the habit of relying on external circumstances or on external people. So I want people to realize that they have this inner freedom and wisdom to do whatever they want to. And this is a skill that anyone can just uncover within themselves. It's not even like you have to develop, you just need to uncover it.
It's not a super
And
secret password type skill.
exactly. Exactly. It's just as soon as you remove all this noise
Yeah.
that's unnecessary, then you realize, actually, I have a lot to offer.
Right.
I just didn't think about it, right? And I guess the third skill that I really want to highlight is that I help people actually not fear any feelings.
Okay.
And the reason why I really emphasize on this is that because of avoiding any feeling or suppressing feeling, we do a lot of crazy things. I mean, complaining is one of the tiny thing, but there are many other things we do, right? We go around pleasing other people. We go around buying things that we don't really need, getting into debt because we want to feel happy, and then we can't be happy with material things, and then again being in debt. So you see that we create somehow trouble because we are afraid of feeling in a certain way.
Right.
And as soon as we get into the habit of thinking, wait a minute, we are humans, we have all these feelings,
Right.
like, I don't know, billions of them, if we can name them, and we are just capable of feeling and processing them, and they're not going to kill us.
Yeah.
And once we realize that, then there is even no need to complain,
Yeah.
because we're not afraid to feel that anymore, right? We're not afraid to be disappointed. We're not afraid to be failing at something. We're just like, I failed. Apparently that's what I do. And then once we have these skills, then there's nothing we cannot do.
Right. Well, it's interesting because that goes into the emotional intelligence idea that
Yes.
we're human first, and people,
Yeah.
we're not machines, we are
Yeah.
human. And the fact that we acknowledge and understand that we have these feelings, and we have to, if you will, deal with them or segment them some way so that we understand them and how to
Yeah.
deal with them, and then still achieve the things we want.
Hmm.
We're capable of doing that. So that's a
Yeah.
great reminder for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think also that we are not really taught how to use those feelings to our advantage. And I think we're always taught to not show them or
Right.
shove them away and
Yes.
not bring them to work, and, crazy things that we do as humans.
Yeah.
But rather than saying, wait a minute, we all feel, we all cry and get
Right.
sad and be happy. And this is part of who we are as humans. And therefore, as long as we are all know what we are feeling and what messages those feelings are bringing, then we can just learn from those messages and say, I'm disappointed because next time I don't want to do this
Right.
issue anymore, right? Or I don't want to create the situation anymore for myself. So how can I learn it? And
Right.
next time I will be better and wiser.
Right.
And that will actually save us a lot more energy and unnecessary suffering than we actually layer with the complaining, with other things, and drinking, and the
Yeah.
eating, emotional eating. And then in the end, we don't like our bodies, we don't like how we wake up in the morning, and then we just don't like our lives, and everything is bad.
Right. And that's that spiral that you don't want to be on.
Yeah.
That downward spiral that you can't get out of, that vortex. It's not a good scenario. And it's
Exactly.
small shifts, small things done daily. As Jim Rohn
Yeah.
said, there's a saying, eat an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That's easy to
Yes.
do, but what's easy not to do is that. Okay. How many of
Yes.
us eat an apple a day? How
I
many
know.
of us stay away from eating all that chocolate? How many of us don't complain? We
Mhm.
don't find the value in it. If we don't find the
Yes.
value in it, we don't need to do it. But at the same time, it does help us learn. What's that feeling behind it? What's that piece of us that we're learning to grow with and understand
Yeah,
better? And it's a learning experience in this journey called life.
exactly.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
beautifully said.
thank you. It's interesting as a life coach. I always gotta ask this scenario because it's like the barber. Who cuts the barber's hair? As a life coach, who coaches you?
Yes, that's a very good question. So actually, whenever I tell people that I have several coaches, people are like, "Oh no, that means you must not be a good life coach
Yeah.
if you need several people, right?" But actually, I've come to realize is that I love life coaching, even being coached myself from different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
because every one of my life coach has their own role in how to look at my thoughts and mirror them back. So
Right.
I have life coaches, and I have business coaches, and I
Mhm.
have different type of coaches, and it's the same like in life if you think about it. So we go to university, and then we get educated by different professors on different topics, and then we expand our thinking about it, right? Expand our ways of looking at things through these interactions with people. And it's a bit same with life coaches. And also what's great about it is that they can see potentials in me that I may not be able to see at this point.
Right.
And therefore, I think everyone could benefit from working with life coach, because you could actually use the life coach's wisdom and experience as a trust that you may not have at this point.
Right.
Trust in yourself that you can create it, or belief in yourself that you have this ability to do this. And then they will be there as your guarantors for
Okay.
how much you can actually trust and create this for yourself. It's just that you borrow their belief, and then once you have that belief instilled in you, then you are good to
Right.
go, and you're going to start creating whatever life you want to. So that's why life coaching can help you not only looking at your mind and then see what's going on in there, but also help you believe in things that you don't yet believe. And then once you do, then our brains are so good at creating the evidence to make that happen.
Great. Well, where can people find out more about you, your website, information about you, so they can follow up with you?
Yeah, so I can be found at complaintfree.life. That's the website that anyone can go to and get all the resources, or in social media. So I suggest the best is just Google, and then I'm sure I'll come up, because there are not many people with my last name. So
Yes. Yes, that's true. Well, so I want to thank you for your time today, for your insight. It's a pleasure to have
thank
you
you.
as a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate what you offer our audience and the
Thank you so much.
ideas and the positive outlook that you offer people. So thank you for
Thank
being a
you.
part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I hope that, yeah, we will interact in the future. And thank you to your listeners for listening to us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too. Bye.